The photograph on my laptop screen showed my grandfather's ring. I'd been scrolling through recent Sotheby's auctions for a jewelry market analysis assignment, checking hammer prices, studying provenance descriptions, the kind of tedious research that made my eyes glaze over. And then I saw it. Burmese emerald, early 1900s, platinum setting. That crack running through the stone like a lightning strike frozen in green. The exact crack my grandfather had refused to repair because it proves it's real, not some perfect fake. Sold 3 weeks ago. Hammer price, $156,000. My hand went to my chest, to the chain under my shirt where the ring should be. Where it was. I could feel the metal, warm against my skin. I pulled it out, held it next to the screen. The stone in my hand was too perfect. No crack. The color slightly off, too bright, too uniform. The platinum setting didn't have the tiny scratch near the band that I'd memorized over 6 years of wearing it daily. This wasn't my grandfather's ring. This was a replica. My coffee cup hit the floor. Brown liquid spreading across cheap linoleum. My roommate looked up, startled, but I was already grabbing my keys. The drive to my parents' house took 17 minutes. I made it in 12. My mother was in the garden when I pulled up, or what used to be a garden. Now it was mostly weeds, a few struggling roses. She straightened when she saw me, trowel in hand, and I watched her face do this thing. This calculation, like she was deciding whether to run. I held up the fake ring. When were you going to tell me? She dropped the trowel. We went inside. She didn't offer tea this time. We just stood in the kitchen and I waited. 3 weeks ago, she finally said. We sold it 3 weeks ago. Why? Property taxes. We were going to lose the house. I looked around the kitchen. The house my grandfather had bought in 1987. The house where I'd learned to make pancakes at that stove, where I'd done homework at that table, where my grandfather had taught me to play chess in the next room. How much did you owe? $180,000. 2 years of back taxes, penalties, all of it. And the ring sold for $156. Yes. Her voice was barely there. So you're still in debt? She didn't answer. I pulled out my phone, showed her the auction listing. When did you replace it with this fake? The day after. We knew you'd notice eventually, but we hoped we'd have time to figure out how to tell you. Or maybe, she stopped. Maybe I wouldn't notice? My voice sounded strange. Too calm. Mom, I'm a jewelry appraiser. This is what I do. I know. Do you? I turned the fake ring over in my palm. Because grandfather gave me this ring when I was 18. He wrote a letter when I was 12 saying he wanted me to have it. That ring was mine. Legally mine. And you stole it. Don't say it like that. What should I call it? What do you call taking something that belongs to someone else, selling it, and replacing it with a fake? She started crying. I'd seen my mother cry maybe 3 times in my life. Now she was sobbing, her whole body shaking. I felt nothing. Where's Dad? At work. Does he know I'm here? No. Does he know you were going to tell me? The pause told me everything. I left her standing in the kitchen. That night, I couldn't stop looking at the fake ring. The craftsmanship was actually decent. Someone had spent real money making this replica, which meant they'd planned this. Bought a fake, sold the real one, swapped them, all while I was walking around thinking everything was fine. I was 7 the first time I held the real ring. My grandfather's study smelled like old books and pipe tobacco. He'd opened a velvet box, and the emerald inside caught the afternoon light. See that crack? He tilted it toward me. Most people would call that a flaw. But that's what makes it real. Perfect things are usually fake. I traced the fracture with my 7-year-old finger. Are you going to give this to someone? Already did. He smiled. I'm just holding on to it until she's ready. I looked up at him. At 18, you'll understand what it means to carry something valuable. He died 3 years before I turned 18. But he'd written it down, made it legal. The ring was mine. For 6 years, I'd worn it every day, built every plan around it. A jewelry business centered on heirloom transformation, taking family stories and creating something new without losing what mattered. That ring would be the proof of concept, the centerpiece. Now it was in someone else's house, and I was holding a $40 fake. My father called at 11 p.m. Your mother told me. Good for her. Sayer, we need to talk about this like adults. Adults communicate before making decisions. Adults don't steal from their children and lie about it. We didn't lie. You replaced my ring with a fake and didn't tell me. What do you call that? Silence. Then, what was I supposed to do? Let the bank take the house? Put your brother on the street? You could have asked me. You could have told me there was a problem. You could have given me a choice. What choice? You're a student making $12 an hour. What were you going to do? Something cold settled into my chest. I don't know, Dad. I guess we'll never find out. Because you decided my property was yours to sell whenever it was convenient. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Explain it to me. Make it make sense. He couldn't. Or wouldn't. After a long pause, he said, It's just a ring. I hung up. The lawyer's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown. Glass and steel, and the kind of quiet that money buys. Yelan was maybe 60, with silver hair and steady hands. I showed him everything. My grandfather's letter, the documentation from my 18th birthday, photos of me wearing the ring over 6 years. He read it twice. Set it down carefully. This is clear ownership. Your parents selling it without your consent is theft. He paused. Given the value, it's grand theft. A felony. The word felony felt too big for the room. However, he continued, the ring itself is likely unrecoverable. The buyer purchased in good faith from a reputable auction house. You'd have to sue them, prove ownership, go through years of litigation. It's expensive and uncertain. So, I can't get it back. Probably not. But you have leverage. He leaned back. Your parents don't know you've consulted an attorney. Don't know the legal exposure they're facing. Don't know that what they did could result in criminal charges. I don't want them arrested. Then what do you want? I sat there, thinking about my mother in that dying garden. My father's defensive anger. Tavin, my 16-year-old brother, who didn't even know this had happened. I want them to understand what they did. I said finally. I want them to see it clearly. Yelan nodded. Then we'll make sure they do. Ask them to meet me at Giuseppe's, the Italian place where we'd celebrated my college graduation, back when I still trusted them. They arrived together. Dad in his work clothes, tie loosened. Mom looking like she hadn't slept. We ordered. Pretended to study menus. The server brought water. Then I said, I spoke to a lawyer. My mother's hand froze on her water glass. My father went very still. The ring was legally mine. I have documentation. What you did was theft, grand theft, actually, which is a felony. I kept my voice level. I know my options. I could press charges. I could pursue recovery. I could make both your lives extremely difficult. Are you threatening us? Dad's voice was tight. I'm stating facts. I pulled an envelope from my bag, slid it across the table. But I'm not doing any of that. I'm offering you something else. He opened it. His jaw clenched as he read. Mom was crying again, but quietly this time. The letter outlined everything. What they'd done. What could happen legally. And my conditions. 1. Complete financial transparency. No more secrets about money. 2. Family therapy. All of us. 3. Written explanations from each of you. Not apologies. I need to understand your thinking. 4. If you agree, I won't pursue legal action. Dad looked up. You're blackmailing us. I'm setting boundaries. This is what has to happen if you want a relationship with me. We're your parents. And I'm an adult whose property you stole. So yes, there are conditions now. Mom wiped her eyes. We'll do it. Whatever you need. Dad stared at the letter for a long moment. Then, quietly, okay. My mother's letter came first. 5 pages, handwritten, her script getting messy toward the end like she was crying while she wrote. She told me about growing up poor. Food stamps. Eviction notices. The shame that never quite left. How she'd spent 30 years hiding financial stress from everyone, including herself. How she'd looked at the ring and seen a solution instead of a violation. I thought I was protecting the family, she wrote. I didn't understand I was breaking it. I didn't understand that you are the family. My father's letter was shorter, more angular. He wrote about anger, at his job, at the economy, at himself. How selling the ring felt like taking control when everything else was chaos. The last paragraph. I thought I was making a hard choice. But hard choices involve sacrifice, and I didn't sacrifice anything. You did. I took the easy way out and called it necessity. I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth. I read them both 3 times. Cried through the last one. The therapist's name was Estelle. She had gray hair and sharp eyes and the kind of calm that made you feel like no problem was unsolvable. Our 4th session was the one that broke through. Tell me about the day you decided to sell the ring, Estelle said to my parents. Not how you felt. What you were thinking. Specifically. Long silence. Finally, Dad spoke. I was thinking about Tavin. About him having to change schools if we lost the house. About what people would say. He stopped. I didn't think about Sarah at all. Not until after. Why not? Because if I thought about her, I'd have to admit what I was doing was wrong. And I needed it to be right. His voice cracked. I needed to believe we had no choice. Mom was staring at her hands. I thought Sarah would understand eventually. That she'd forgive us, because that's what families do. I thought the ring was just an object, and objects matter less than people. But it wasn't just an object, Estelle said gently. No. Mom looked at me for the first time that session. Really looked. It was her future. And we sold her future to save our past. Something in my chest loosened. Not forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that word yet. But something. Room to breathe, maybe. 6 months later, things started changing. Mom got a second job at a bookstore. Evening shifts. When I asked why, she said, the property taxes are my responsibility. Not yours. Not anyone else's. Dad started being honest about money. Started saying, I'm worried about this instead of everything's fine. Started asking for help instead of pretending he didn't need it. Tavin found out what happened. He was furious, slammed his bedroom door so hard it cracked the frame. But then he came to a family session and said to our parents, you taught me my whole life that stealing is wrong. And then you stole from Sayre and called it family. They didn't have an answer for that. The ring was never recovered. I looked up the buyer once, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, when I couldn't sleep. Found a name. An address in Greenwich, Connecticut. Old money. The kind of person for whom $156,000 was a nice piece, but not a sacrifice. I sat with my phone for 20 minutes, composing and deleting an email. Finally closed the laptop. The ring was gone. Chasing it would only keep me in the past. But something unexpected happened. Word spread somehow. Maybe I mentioned it to a client. Maybe they told someone else. But people started coming to me with similar stories. Jewelry sold without permission. Heirlooms lost in divorces. Family pieces pawned and never recovered. People who understood that these objects weren't just valuable. They were promises. And when those promises broke, you needed someone who understood that specific kind of grief. I built my practice around it. Around broken trust and fractured families, and the question of what you create when the foundation you were building on suddenly disappears. The ring was supposed to be my proof of concept. Instead, its absence became my expertise. 2 years later, I'm at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. It's ordinary now. Weekly. Expected. Tavin is complaining about his calculus teacher. Dad is making terrible puns. Mom is passing around lasagna that smells like my childhood. The dining room table is the same one where I did homework as a kid, where my grandfather taught me chess, where we used to have these big family dinners that felt like they'd go on forever. I'm not wearing any rings. My fingers are bare. Sometimes clients notice and ask about it, and I tell them the short version. Family heirloom, sold without permission, never recovered. Most of them nod like they understand. Some of them tell me their own stories. But sitting here, watching my father help my mother clear plates, Watching Tavin scroll through his phone while simultaneously participating in conversation, I think about what's been built in the empty space where that ring used to be. My parents aren't perfect. They still mess up. They still hurt me sometimes, though now they admit it instead of hiding it. But they're trying. And that trying matters. Mom catches my eye across the table, holds it for a moment. She doesn't say anything. Doesn't need to. But I see it in her face, gratitude, maybe. Or just recognition. That we're here. That we made it through. After dinner, I help with dishes. Dad washes, I dry like we've been doing for months now. It's peaceful. Quiet except for the water running and plates clinking. I saw one of your Instagram posts, he says. That necklace you made for the woman whose mother lost her ring. It was beautiful. Thanks. You're really building something. He hands me a plate. Your grandfather would be proud. I take the plate, dry it carefully, set it in the cabinet. Yeah, I say. I think he would. And the strange thing is, I mean it. Not because of the ring. The ring is still gone, will always be gone. But because of what grew in its absence. This practice. These clients. This family that had to break completely before it could build itself into something real. Later, driving home, I think about my grandfather's words. The ones he said when I was 7, holding that emerald for the first time. Perfect things are usually fake. He was talking about the crack in the stone. About imperfection as proof of authenticity. But maybe he was also talking about families. About relationships. About how the perfect ones, the ones without fractures, without pain, without that moment of complete breaking, those are the ones that aren't quite real. My family is cracked straight through. The break is visible. We can't hide it, can't fix it, can't pretend it didn't happen. But we're real now. Messy and imperfect and absolutely, undeniably real. And sometimes, not every day, but sometimes that feels like enough.